Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the School for Daily Racing, a new series that we're doing on the channel. We started it last week, we're back this week. If you do enjoy these videos, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, it all helps me out massively and I'm very grateful for anyone who does that. So we're starting off with this week's score at Daily Race A. We're on Sport Soft Tyres in the go-karts at Tsukuba. Actually pretty good combination, I'm going to be honest with you. It's quite an enjoyable one, always fun at Tsukuba. Not necessarily the best physics in the go-karts on Gran Turismo, but it is entertaining. Now, slipstream is on real, not custom, because in go-karts, the slipstream in general is very strong, so you don't need to run custom slipstream in the go-karts. Now, when you are running the go-karts, a little bit of advice is to make sure you turn ABS off and run maybe counter steer assist. Now, SR risk is medium, and do remember, chat, if you do enjoy these videos, and if you are a member, you get to watch these one day early access. It will go live to everyone on the Tuesday. So let's start this off straight away in the go-karts. Remember that no need for traction control on this standing start, and do remember there is a false start check on this race, so just be cautious you don't get the jump on there. You don't want to get that false start. Now, like I say, SR risk is medium. I'd say you want to be careful here because it's quite difficult not to come into contact with some people in this race because of the way the go-karts handle, and obviously with the radar it can be quite difficult. Because I find this car, a little bit of advice again here, is when you run cockpit view with the go-kart, everything's smoother, it's a lot easier to control. If you run my normal view where I'm right on the front without any view of the car, it's very sketchy and very sensitive to inputs. However, as soon as you put it on the cockpit view like this, everything feels better, the physics, everything feels more reliable, especially when you're running counter steer assist. I do recommend running that on weak. That's what I'm running, just to make sure it feels a bit better, because the go-kart physics on Gran Turismo are not particularly great. The only time I'll ever use counter steer assist is in this car, and the only time I'll ever turn ABS off is in this car. For some reason, them settings work really well. So going into this corner here, you can see we're going to try and hold that inside line. Now, the great thing about go-karts is, on this combination, for example, you can use many different lines. Sometimes sliding it in, getting in front, but then your exit speed won't be as high, or taking a slightly wider line and getting that exit speed will give you a benefit. As we accidentally give P3 a little bit of a punt there where he's obviously slid into the corner, so I lifted off, make sure he gets back past me, so let them back through. Now, that is one thing I recommend you do. If you make a mistake like that, we went into the car in front, we own the mistake, let them back through there, because if you don't, they're going to probably end up punting you. So it's always good to let the cars back through if you ever make a mistake like that, like I've just done there. It will pay off in the long run. So moving on a little bit further to lap 3 here, you can see we've managed to get ourselves in P5. We've got Arkies right behind us, Mr. Daily Race A, as we go for a little move up the inside there, but decided to back out of it. And we have another driver that looks like they've rage quit there. But yeah, P3 took a slightly different entry into that corner. He went for the exit speed, I went for the entry speed. Again, he's going for that wide line, and I had to back out again off the throttle and be very cautious because I didn't want to throttle it too early. But always so much fun, go-karts at Tsukuba. I definitely recommend, if you've never given it a go, give it a try. Just be very cautious. Remember, there is no DR in this. It's all about your safety rating. Now, this corner is the corner where you're going to get a lot of people sending it up the inside. You can see into this corner, I went for a send nearly on P3 there. But the good thing about this corner is holding it around the outside where I put that purple line, you can actually carry quite a bit of speed. Now, you're going to see here, we've got Arkies on our inside, and he's going to show you how to do an overtake into this final corner. So he's going to go for that red line. He's on our right-hand side here, and I'm going to try and hold it on the purple line. Now, at this stage, my skills around the outside here were not quite up to the needed ability, and I lose a little bit of traction there, and Arkies does a lovely move up the inside. So that is another corner you're going to get a lot of people sending it, as is this corner here. This is another heavy zone for where people are going to try and do an overtake on you. So always be looking in that mirror behind you in these particular corners. But you can see we got a nice slipstream off Arkies. Now I'm going to try and go around the outside of this corner. Now this is extremely difficult because you can't get on the throttle too early, and Arkies holds a very good defensive line there on the inside, holding that P4. So now into this fast right hand corner, completely flat out here. You can see Arkies looked like he had a little bit of slide there. We carried a lot more speed, and we put ourselves back up to P4 before the braking zone for this tight hairpin. And again, sliding it in slightly, and that is the one thing about ABS off. You can actually slide the go-kart in a little bit better, and you can see I can brake a little bit later because of that. So having to be a little bit cautious sometimes because of how late we can actually brake in some of these braking zones. So moving on a little bit further now, and we're on lap 7, and we're going to go through a guide view. We've managed to break away from everyone else in this go-kart race, and we're in P3, and we're in the slipstream to P2, obviously. and we're going to go through a guide. So looking for the 50 board on our left hand side there, that's what you're going to use for the braking reference for this corner. Now, you're going to be careful as you go into this corner. There is different ways of approaching this. You can go for that wide line and really push the throttle, or you can take quite a narrow apex and then try and hold the speed close to the curb. Both lines can actually work in the go-karts. It's very much a case of experimental racing with these go-karts, and that's why I quite like them. So you can see we go for more of a middle of the track line. P2 actually nearly lost control there. He went for that tighter line and looks like he got a little bit aggressive on the throttle. Now, into the next braking zone, basically, as soon as our right tyre is up onto that curb, onto the brakes, and earlier normally a little bit better for this corner because you want to take a line that's going to keep you a little bit closer to the curb on the left, because if you, like before when you saw Arki's up our left, he defended and was able to take a better line. You can see I go a little bit deep there, and what that does is it limits your ability to put on the throttle as early. So you can see a little bit slow on the throttle there because I didn't take that line quite so narrow, but completely flat out almost through this right hand corner. You can do it flat, but at this stage I give it a little safety lift. You'll see there a little lift off the throttle and then back onto that throttle and carry the speed through the corner, and then now into that heavy braking zone for this hairpin. You can see we're braking just before the end of the green Astro here, making sure that we can slow it down. And you can see you can actually get really aggressive here as we slide it in right up behind P2 now. And we've got right into that slipstream. And even with real slipstream, this slipstream is fairly strong. So he's gone defensive, which is kind of have to because it's so strong, the slipstream in real. And then we're going to go to the left-hand side. And we're going to try and, this time, hold around the outside like we did with Arki's. But hopefully we won't lose traction. So let's see if we can make it work this time. Round the outside. And this time we don't lose traction. We keep it planted. And we actually do a lovely move around the outside. Not the ideal racing line, but we do a lovely move around the outside there and take P2 in that race. So yeah, quite an enjoyable daily race A. Definitely recommend you give it a go. Should be good for VR as well. So this week's daily race B, we are at Nurburgring Sprint Track, and we're in Group 4, racing hard tyres. No, brake bias is the only setup option allowed to change. And again, we are running custom slipstream for this week's daily race B. And obviously with it being daily race B, ×1 tyre wear, ×1 fuel. No real strategy in this. It's just 6 laps. Now SR risk I would say is average. It's not that bad, to be honest. It's I didn't really come across many issues in this race. The issues that I was having was with a penalty zone, but I'm going to go through that with you when we do the track guide to make sure you understand where you are getting a penalty. So brake bias, we ran free to the rear. For those that do not know about this, in 4-wheel drive cars, the further you go to the rear, it seems like there's a little bit of a bug in Gran Turismo where the more you go to the rear, the more stable the car actually becomes. Not sure why it's like that, because it should in theory give you more rotation, but there's a very weird bug on the 4-wheel drive where you go 5 to the rear and it actually keeps the car a lot more settled. So yeah, if you're struggling with the rotation of this car being a little bit too much, try going further to the rear. Now, there is a few penalty zones that you have to be careful on this track, but I'm going to go into that as we go a little bit further on. So this is one of the main braking zones you're going to have to be careful of people going for a lunge, because it will lose you both a lot of the time, but they will go for it there. So be cautious, keep your eye on the inside there. I felt like I had enough of a gap there that I didn't really need to defend. And this is a difficult track to overtake on, so patience should pay off as well here. Just be patient with your moves. You don't want to be lunging too much, because lunges here will generally lose both of you a lot of the time. So into the next opportunity of where you're going to get your overtakes done. Now there's obviously three major ones, the ones we just showed you. This one into the chicane, and obviously turn 1 is where you're going to get most of your overtaking done. So you're going to see a lot of people, if they're right up behind you, go for that move up the inside here. Now sometimes people will try and hang it around the outside, and I don't recommend that for this chicane. What I always say is better to do is let them go up the inside, hang back, tuck in behind them and try and get a better exit to come out the chicane ahead of them. A lot of people always try and go side by side through there, and all it ends up with is normally a little bit of contact, and doesn't normally work quite well for you. So yeah, try and, if anything, try and tuck in behind them and then improve your exit because they've took that tighter line. So obviously the next overtaking opportunity, turn 1. You can brake very late here. It's a really, it almost invites you in for a send. You can see braking just before the 100. And if you hold the outside line though, when someone goes for that inside line, very often you can keep the inside line for this next corner. So just bear that in mind when it comes to defending. If you brake late on the outside, you might be able to hang it for the next corner. But we're going to go through a track guide now. We're on lap 5. We're going to be looking for that 100 board on the left hand side here. So just before the 100 board, we're going to get onto the brakes, and then we're going to get downshifting all the way down to first gear for that rotation. So you can see second gear, And now at this point you really want to start rotating it in. So you can see we're going to use first gear and try and get that right hand tire as close to the curb as possible on the right there, and aggressively on the throttle as soon as that car, pretty much before it's landed onto that throttle. Now, entry into this corner, you can see we're braking before the start of the curb on the left. You can see braking input going in, just a dab of brakes. You don't want to be super aggressive on the brakes there. It's all about getting the rotation into the car with that second gear shift. And again, braking before the end of the Astro. It's good to brake early for this corner to make sure that you can slow it down and keep the car nice and tight to the curb on the left. That will then open up this next corner for you here. And it's really important to open this up because this is where you're going to be picking up some penalties. So some of you may have noticed you're getting penalties on this corner. I'm going to show you why. As you come here, if your right-hand tyre goes over the white line in a like straight line like I've shown you there, you're going to get a penalty. You want to try and bring it back before that white line, back onto the track before that white line, and you should avoid the penalty. Now, next braking zone, braking pretty much on the shadow in front of us, a pretty easy braking zone there. And again, you're going to try and hold a very tight line through this hairpin. This is where the grip is, nice and narrow to the corner. It enables you to get on the throttle super early in the Lamborghini and then use some of the curb on the exit and then into the next braking zone. We're going to brake just short of that white line. Another handy white line for you there for the braking zone. And we're going to stay in third gear here. We're not going to go to second, just let third gear carry the speed through with the throttle and then swinging it into this next right hand corner. So as soon as you've swung it to the left, you're onto the brakes immediately, just a dab of the brakes. You can see up to 40% and then we're pretty much off that brake and then onto the throttle to carry out this exit speed. Important to get a good exit off that corner because then you can carry that momentum all the way up into the chicane for when you're going to try and get some overtakes done, because like I say, it's quite a difficult track to overtake. So into this next braking zone, we're braking just short of the 100 board, and this is all about where you send it over the chicane. As much as you can get away with, you need to try and get away with. So rotating it in here, you're going to take a lot of the curb off on the entry. You can see right over the curb, and then you're going to aim your car at that bollard. That is what I do. Aim it at the bollard and turn right as aggressively as you can with throttle down to avoid running onto the grass on the left hand side. Then into the final corner. This corner is a tricky one. It's all about braking early here, I find. Trying to get the car slowed down and trying to hug as close to the line to the apex as possible. And then you can get on that throttle a little bit earlier and carry that speed to the finishing line. We go over the line for, I think it's like a 41.7, a 31.7. Not a bad lap, not an amazing lap, but it's good enough for a track guy. Now, we didn't have the most competition in this race. We ended up winning by quite a margin there. You can see I think we were like 5 seconds or more clear. But now we are going to go into Daily Race C, which is an unusual one. We have Group 3 in racing soft tyres, compulsory pit stop, setups on, and a standing start. And for those that are interested in the setup, I've put the setup on screen for you to try out there. And if you are struggling with a little bit of snapping on the rear during the brakes, consider lowering the acceleration sensitivity. That's what I did from 60 to 50. It seemed to help. So maybe a little bit more if you're still struggling with that. But yeah, it's quite a nice setup for the race. It worked very well for me. And we also have custom slipstream at Red Bull Ring, which you know that's going to lead to a little bit of chaos because in general it's an easy track to follow on. And now with custom slipstream, I think this makes the SR risk reasonably high for this combination. Not as high as I would say last week's Daily Race C, but there is reasonable risk with this standing start. Now, be cautious. If you see anyone ghost at the start because they've jumped the start, be very, very cautious because the game will on-ghost them right in front of you because this is Gran Turismo and PD don't always optimize everything. So we go down the right hand side here, being very, very good, braking early. One thing I would say is make sure you do not kill people in turn one. Be cautious. Brake earlier rather than later. There are going to be people who are looking to take advantage and try and gain 20 positions. Or, well, we can't gain 20 because there's only 16 cars on track, but they're going to try and gain a lot of positions at the start. But yeah, it's always better to be a bit cautious on these first few corners. Again, I'm really cautious here and braking nice and early. We're still in P10. We haven't gained massively. We gained 2 positions there. I think that was more because of the acceleration off the line. And yeah, we're going to go into this next braking zone. Now, one thing I would say is this is a really good overtaking opportunity on lap 1. Is the car on the right, the defence, has to brake early because of the cars in front. When you're on the outside, you find you can brake a little bit later. And at this situation here, we almost get sandwiched, but somehow, not sure how, we managed to get through that situation and then get the car done on the inside here into P8. So a nice start for us so far in this race, up into P8, and yeah, everything's gone quite well there. And it's all about driving cautious, being aware of what other cars are doing. Just try not to push your luck a little bit too much on this opening lap. You can get greedy, and you very likely will be punished if you get too greedy with trying to take too many cars on them first few corners. But I do like this change. I will say the standing start, I don't think it's going to be a thing that's on every week. I just think it's obviously because the Nations race is coming up, and maybe they just want to get people used to the settings and stuff. I think it might be a standard start for the Nations race as well, as we managed to go for a move there on that Mercedes. Really good opportunity for an overtake. That's where I found I've been overtaking a lot of people out of the final exit. Try and get a good exit. A lot of people struggle on that exit, and if you get the run, you can get a nice move done. Again, this corner, really important to get a move done here, because you can get, if you get nice and close to the curb and get on the throttle earlier, you can see you pick up that slipstream, and then you can get yourself in a prime position for an overtake on the inside here, as we're going up the inside of Rory, giving him space on the outside, and then back onto that throttle, and we've done a very nice move there up the inside to put ourselves into P6. Now we're going to go into a track guide, why we've got a bit of a gap in front of us, because you're going to find the slipstream will play a big factor in that as well, but we've got not much slipstream here, so let's get this guide done. So looking for the 100 point, the 100 braking reference there, the 100 board, we're braking just short of that, and again, you want to get this car right over the curb on the right, so in third gear, up onto the curb, and accelerate through the corner. So you can see I missed the curb slightly there, but we managed to get it rotated enough that we didn't get a penalty on the exit, and we actually took reasonable speed through there, so it could have been a little bit better, but still, it's not too bad. Now into the next braking zone, again, we're going to look for that 100 board, but brake before that 100 board. We are on soft tyres, but remember, slipstream. It's going to mean you need to brake ever so slightly earlier. And again, for this corner, I'm going to hold second gear. You can use first gear to rotate it. Second gear, though, I find if you hold second gear, it makes the throttle input a little bit smoother on the exit, although I run a little bit wide there, carrying a bit too much speed in. And then into the next braking zone. Again, it's all about them 100 boards at the moment. We're going to look for that 100 board again on the left, braking just short of that 100 board there. So you can see almost in between the 150 and the 100 board there. And again, down to second gear, but then back up to third gear for this corner. So you can see at this point here, we're in third, but we're now going to go down to second gear to get a bit of rotation in the Genesis, and then back up to third gear. Now, there is going to be other cars you can use here. I do suspect with setups on, Porsche is going to end up being a pretty solid car, along with the Nissan GTR. I wouldn't be surprised to see if that car ends up being reasonable here just because of setups. Now, we're using a 50 board for our braking reference into these two fast left-hand corners, and again, you want to get this car rotated so that the left-hand tyre is right up to the curb on the left, so you can get on that throttle nice and early and carry the speed, using some of the curb on the right, and then braking just before you see the white line, obviously from the sprint layout. And then again, you want to get this rotated in third gear as close to the curb so you can get on that throttle to carry the speed out the exit here. Using a lot of the curb on the right there, you can get away with a lot, but too much, you will get a penalty. So be very, very cautious of the penalty zone on that corner also. Into the final corner, we're braking past the 100 board, almost about 2/3 away from the 50, and then down to third gear, try and get that rotated in onto the throttle aggressively to straighten the car up, and then early on the brakes for this final corner. I always recommend early for this final corner, because then you can take some of the curb on the entry. That will give you the ability to get on the throttle earlier and carry more speed to the finishing line. We managed to go over the line. It's not an amazing lap, it's a 27.6, but it's solid enough there for the track guide for this combination. But as we skip a little bit further on now, we can see a little bit of chaos into the braking zone for turn 3. That is a corner that you're going to have to be very, very careful of people going for the lunges. And there is different lines you can take through there in terms of overtaking. So always be defensive there if you think that you need to be. Again, same thing for turn 4 also. But we're going to skip a little bit further on into that 4. And again, that corner, I really recommend you focus your pace, like a lot of attention on getting that corner right, because a lot of my overtakes have come from getting better exits off that corner. I noticed when I was doing it today, I think we made 4 or 5 positions there just by getting better exits off that final corner. And again, turn 1's a similar one. Get a good exit off there, gives you the ability into the braking zone. So another point that I would like to make on this race is, when you pit in, if you've got a car right behind you, definitely make sure that you're putting your indicator on to let them know that you're going to be going into the pits, because in a racing situation, if someone's right behind you and you just start off to the right and slow down randomly, you could cause a bit of chaos on this race. I'm pretty sure you're going to see it happen this week. So yeah, put your indicator on, let people know you're going into that pits, and then you'll give them the warning if you're pitting early that, you know, they need to take a wider line, and they're not going to then punt you and give you a 3-second penalty either, because you can easily pick up a 3-second penalty if you're hit wide over the white line on this combination. So again, we can see this is going to turn into a extreme battle here. And one great thing about the Red Bull Ring is you can run side by side. I think I've got a YouTube short on this combination where it's pretty much the whole lap. I had to fast forward the straights because it is one full lap side by side. I think I was in the Genesis and they might have been in the BMW, or it might have been in the GTR, can't remember, but it was absolutely brilliant. You can really get away with taking different lines here, and running side by side. The only thing is you will lose a lot of lap time. You can see we've got a decent gap to Rory behind us there, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. But now this whole situation's kicking off in front of us, and I'm just pretty much sitting back here thinking I can't really attack them because it could like quite literally end in disaster. And now the previous race to this, we had a bit of a nightmare with the ghosted driver on the left there, so we were being a little bit more cautious than what we normally be. So we go for a move up the inside here. Now one thing about this is if you're in this situation, make sure you brake early. You can't brake your normal reference, so you can see I'm on the brakes very aggressively there, making sure that we give space to the car on the outside, and that's one thing you have to do. If you're going to go for a move when you're side by side there, you're going to have to make sure you brake in time to give them the space on the exit. And again, you can see we get a better exit off that final corner, another position gain, 3 positions in this one race, purely from making sure that we get a good exit off that final corner. So start hooking that final corner up, and I think you're going to gain a fair few positions. So again, we're going to go a little bit defensive here. Now, unfortunately for us, the Spanish driver bump drafted the car on our left, which meant we were left pretty much nothing there, and we brake as late as we can. But now again, we're going to have to go side by side, and we haven't got that acceleration from that wider line. So again, we're going to try and hold the inside here, but you can see what we're going to end up doing is tucking back into that slipstream to pick up a bit of slip from P1, well P2, technically P1, but P2, and then we're going to go for that late brake, and we're going to use first gear for a bit of rotation there, and then second gear for the acceleration because we went very, very deep. Now unfortunately at this phase, we got a little bit of contact from the car behind. You can see he's right in our mirror, and the little tap there knocks me into the gravel. So I did think that happened. I was quite suspicious that we might have got knocked wide there when I was racing. When I was doing this video, I seen the contact happen on the telemetry, and obviously you could see it in the mirror, and you could see the car jolt to the left. So unfortunately, that's why we ended up going off there. And all this battling was just losing us all a lot of time. But by the time we get to the final lap here, we're still at it, and it's all about just being cautious. You can see they're going to go side by side, so I back off here and try and take a tight line. Unfortunately, P1 has a little bit of a wiggle on the rear there, which means he doesn't get the exit, and this means I can't brake late. So again, I'm going to have to brake early. Can't brake on my normal point when there's a car right in front of us, and we're going to try and hang it around the outside, but we're not going to be able to make that. And then P2 is going to go for a lunge up the inside there. P1 sees it coming. They're going to go side by side, but that is now going to give me the ability to get a good exit, and that's why we were hanging back a bit, to try and get that better exit off the corner. And we're going to go down the right hand side and try and go for a move on the right hand side, but you can see they're going to go side by side. P1 brakes very, very early, gives the space, but then the door is open for me to go up to P2, and now it's going to be a drag race all the way to the finish. Absolutely brilliant ending here, and we managed to just about creep P2 on the finishing line. So yeah, great racing, and you can see that if you hang back, sometimes you can get them positions just by hanging back a little bit on this race. And the side-by-side chances at this combination are massive. You can run laps and laps side-by-side round there, and it is a lot of fun. But it will lose you a lot of lap time, so bear that in mind. But hopefully, what we've done here will help you out for this week's daily races. Like I say, the cars, the Genesis, I think the GTR might not be too bad. You've got the Porsche. There is some other MR cars that might be able to compete, but the tyre wear might be quite risky on the rear tyre wear for this track because it is an acceleration track. So yeah, I think Corvette also might not be the worst car, but at the moment Genesis with the setup seems to be very good. But that brings us to the end of the video, and hopefully we would have helped you with the laps and also a few tips with that video. So do feel free to hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the live streams. Bye everyone.